As soon as the song was over, Mahi released her hand from Ranbir's hand and came down from the floor. Ranbir didn't like Mahi going away from himself like this. His fists were tightened with anger. There was someone else there who was watching them with a devil smile. Mahi came out of the party hall and came towards the garden. She was feeling suffocated inside. Ranbir also started following her outside. At that time, a waiter brought a drink in front of her. Ranbir picked up a glass of wine and drank it in one breath. He put the glass back on the tray and went ahead. Vedant was watching all this. Before Ranbir could go out, Vedant held his arm and stopped him. Ranbir looked at him with his red eyes and said, "Get out of my way, Vedant." Ranbir had had a lot of drinks before coming to the party. Now he was getting addicted to alcohol. Vedant held his arm and said, "What are you doing? Mahi was also sad today. And your behavior is also very strange. What is happening?" Ranbir's anger was increasing more than before. He quickly released his arm from Vedant's grip and said, "This is a matter between me and my wife. Stay away from it." Saying this, he went out. Vedant looked down and said, "Why are you behaving so strangely?" Mahi came to the garden and stood on a tree. Mahi, who was still controlling herself to a large extent, now she started crying loudly. She put her hand on her face so that no one could hear her cry. Ranbir came out looking for Mahi. Then he saw Mahi near a tree some distance away. At this time, Mahi's back was towards Ranbir, because of which Mahi could not see Ranbir. Ranbir took his step towards him. After reaching near Mahi, Ranbir did it to himself. Doing this to Ranbir, Mahi got scared for a while. But when she saw Ranbir in front of her, she started getting angry again. When Ranbir saw Mahi's red eyes, his heart started melting. But now Mahi was also in a mood to fight with Ranbir. She pushed Ranbir hard, because of which Ranbir went 2 steps back. Mahi again stood facing the other side. Once again, Ranbir came near Mahi and put his hand on her shoulder. Then Mahi shook his hand. Ranbir looked at Mahi with his eyes narrowed, who was still facing him. Ranbir wrapped his hand on his waist from behind and started kissing his neck. Mahi started trying to remove his hand from her waist, but Ranbir's grip on his waist got tighter than before. When Mahi felt that she could not free herself from Ranbir's grip, she stopped trying. But she was shivering due to anger and crying, which Ranbir also felt. Mahi started trying to remove his hand from her waist, but Ranbir's grip on his waist got tighter than before. When Mahi felt that she could not free herself from Ranbir's grip, she stopped trying. But she was shivering due to anger and crying, which Ranbir also felt. Ranbir was standing with his lips on Mahi's neck with his eyes closed. He was feeling the smell of Mahi's body with his eyes closed. Mahi was feeling Ranbir's warm breath on his neck, because of which his fists got tight. Ranbir, who was still lost in Mahi's fragrance, his grip got loose for a while. When Mahi felt this, she pushed Ranbir hard once again and started looking back. Mahi said angrily, "Stay away from me. I am not a toy in your hands. Whenever you feel like, you come close to me. And whenever you feel like, you go away from me." Saying this, Mahi wiped her tears and ran away from there. Ranbir was surprised to see Mahi before. But when Mahi went away from there, his fists got tight due to anger. He warned him in a loud voice, "Stop. Don't even think about going from here." Hearing Ranbir's voice, Mahi's feet stopped on their own. Maybe this happened because of Ranbir's fear. But Mahi was still standing with her back to Ranbir. Ranbir moved his feet towards Mahi. As soon as Mahi felt Ranbir's coming, Mahi moved her feet to go away from there. Before she could go ahead, her feet got stuck in the sari. But before falling under Mahi, Ranbir quickly held her hand. Mahi looked at Ranbir anxiously. Ranbir's face was expressionless. She pulled Mahi towards herself. Mahi went straight from Ranbir's chest. This time, Ranbir held her tightly in his arms. He looked into her eyes and said, "You have become very brave." Mahi was feeling fear inside. But she didn't want to let that fear come on her face. She looked into Ranbir's eyes with tears in her eyes and whispered into his arms, "When someone punishes you without any mistake, you become brave." Mahi said this. But inside she was afraid that now Ranbir will get angry at her. After hearing Mahi's words, Ranbir narrowed his eyes and looked at her. He held her hair tightly. Then he showed his face. Now anger was clearly visible in his eyes. Because Mahi's words had drawn his attention back to that photo in which he had seen Mahi close to someone else. Doing this to Ranbir was hurting Mahi a lot. Tears flowed from her eyes and came on her cheeks. Ranbir said, "How dare you talk to me like this?" "I will." Before Ranbir could finish his words, someone called him. "Ranbir, what are you doing?" Anita was standing behind Ranbir. She came there looking for Mahi. Hearing Anita's voice, Ranbir lost his balance. So Mahi ran and hid behind Anita. And started looking at Ranbir with frightened eyes. Ranbir was staring at Mahi with anger. Anita placed her hand on Mahi's hand and said, "You go and wait in the parking area. I am coming right now." Mahi was very scared of Ranbir. Then here Ranbir was staring at Mahi with anger. When Mahi heard Anita's words, she also did not hesitate to leave. And left quickly. Ranbir kept staring at Mahi until Mahi disappeared from his eyes. Anita came to Ranbir and held his arm and said, "What was this way to talk to Mahi?" Ranbir, who was still looking at the same direction from where Mahi had gone, started looking at Anita. Then he answered in a low voice, "Mom, you stay away from all this. She is my wife. If she makes any mistake, then I have the right to get angry at her. What is Mahi's mistake? Tell me. Why are you behaving like this with her? And even if she has made any mistake, still you cannot talk to her like this." Anita scolded Ranbir and said, hearing Anita's words, Ranbir did not answer her. And turned away from her. Anita stood in front of Ranbir and said angrily, "Ranbir, keep one thing in mind. I have brought Mahi as my daughter to my house. And no one, even if it is you, cannot talk to her like this. Understood?" Saying this, she asked to go from there. But stopped after taking a few steps. Then she said to Ranbir without turning, "I am taking Mahi home with me. And if possible, you also return home soon." Saying this, she left from there. Ranbir saw Anita leaving. And in anger, he went back to the party hall. Standing at a distance, Samira was watching all this with a cute smile. Then she saw a tablet in her hand and said, "Just 3 days and 3 pills. Then everything is over." Saying this, she started laughing mischievously. Ranbir was feeling a different kind of restlessness. As soon as he came, he picked up a glass of drink and emptied it in one breath. The waiter standing at the counter quietly pointed at someone and moved another glass of drink towards Ranbir. In Ranbir's mind, Mahi was still in his mind. He could not bear Mahi's response and going away from her. In this thought, he emptied the second glass of drink. As soon as he drank the drink, he felt peace for a while. But after a while, his restlessness started increasing. He was also feeling very nervous. He got up and came out of the party hall. He sat in his car and left for home. He was sweating a lot. For a while, he stopped the car on a deserted road. And after getting out of the car, he took off his coat and threw it on the car seat. He himself could not understand what was happening to him. He was very angry at that time. And as soon as he was thinking of Mahi, his anger was increasing. He hit his hand hard on the bonnet and said, "No one can save you from me today, Mahi. Today I will definitely know the truth." Saying this, he sat back in the car and left from there in full speed. Kapoor mansion. Mahi came back home with Anita. At that time, she was in a very bad mood. She quickly came and sat on her bed. And for a long time, she kept thinking about Ranbir's behavior. She said to herself, "What has happened to you, Ranbir? Why are you doing all this to me? Please don't do this." Thinking this, her eyes got wet. After sitting like this for a long time, she got up and went towards the washroom. When Ranbir came home, everyone was already asleep. He went straight to his room. He opened the door and came to his room. His eyes were looking for Mahi in the whole room. Then the washroom door opened and Mahi came out drying her wet hair with a towel. At that time, she was wearing a light pink kurti and white blouse, in which she was looking like a fresh bloomed rose. When Mahi felt the warmth of someone's eyes on her, she looked up and saw. On the sofa in front, Ranbir was staring at Mahi with one foot on the other. At that time, she was folding the sleeves of her shirt. And she was holding her both hands on the armrest. At that time, any girl could lose her heart. Ranbir was staring at Mahi with his intoxicating eyes. His face was expressionless, but his eyes were showing his anger completely. Seeing Ranbir, Mahi's heart was beating fast because of fear. Ranbir stood up from the sofa and put his both hands in his pocket and slowly started moving towards him. Seeing Ranbir coming towards him like this, sweat drops began to appear on Mahi's face due to fear. The towel slipped from his hands and fell on the floor. As Ranbir was coming closer to him, Mahi's steps were going backwards. Mahi's fear was clearly visible in her eyes. Her eyes were also wet due to fear. Before she could go any further, Ranbir grabbed her arm and put it on the wall and blocked her way with his both hands. What conspiracy is Samira making against Ranbir and Mahi? Will Ranbir cross all his limits in his anger? How will Mahi be able to tolerate Ranbir's anger? To know more, keep listening to Oh Baby only on Love Pulse Diaries. Ranvir smiled strangely and said, "Who will save you now, Mahi?" My words were left unuttered by Mom's arrival. But now, no one can come between you and me in this room. Then she held her cheeks tightly and said, "Yes, so what did you say? What is your fault?" "So listen, it is your fault that you tried to deceive me. And you must know that I have no excuse for deception. There is only punishment, which I will give you today. So that you understand this thing well, that only I have a right on your body and soul. If anyone else tries to take my right, then I will kill him. Even if it is you." After saying this, she pushed Mahi to the bed. Mahi fell on the bed, and a scream came out of her mouth. She turned and looked at Ranbir, who was not less than a demon to Mahi today. Mahi was shivering with fear. Mahi started scratching her back on the bed and said in her shivering voice, "Don't come near me. I didn't do anything. Why are you doing this to me?" Saying this, Mahi started crying. But today, Ranbir was overwhelmed with such evilness. She couldn't see Mahi's tears. She was looking at Ranbir with frightened eyes, while Ranbir was opening the button of his shirt with an evil smile. Then he removed the shirt and threw it on the floor. Mahi wanted to run away from here somehow. Mahi always found peace in the arms of Ranbir. Today she was very scared of that Ranbir. Today she felt that the person in front of her is not her Ranbir. He is someone else. Because his Ranbir could never hurt her like this. Mahi sat on the other side of the bed and ran towards the door. But Ranbir also quickly grabbed her hand and pushed her back to the bed. By pushing like this, the corner of the bed got stuck on Mahi's head. And a little blood started flowing from there. Because of the pain, she screamed a little. Her entire face was wet with tears. Before she could run away from there, Ranbir held her both hands and pressed them on the bed. Because of the anger, she didn't care about Mahi's injury. Mahi's small face was completely red with crying and pain. She said to Ranbir while crying, "What happened to you, Ranbir? How can you do this to me? Please leave me." Ranbir held her both hands with one hand and put it on her head. And then he said, "What happened, baby? I am your husband. So I can do anything with you. What's the point of crying so much? Besides, this is not the first time all this is happening between us. Yes, this time you will not feel less than a punishment. Because today you will definitely get the punishment for your mistake. After saying this, he put his lips on Mahi's lips and started kissing her in a very wild way. Because of fear and pain, tears started flowing from the corner of Mahi's eyes. Because of the bite, Mahi's lips were cut. Mahi was now suffocating. She started running to get herself out of Ranbir's grip. But how hard could poor Mahi put pressure on Ranbir? After a while, Ranbir moved away from her and started looking at Mahi, taking a deep breath. Mahi's innocent face, soaked in tears, was red with crying and pain. A cut had been made on her lips, and there was a slight bleeding from the wound on her forehead. Seeing Mahi in this condition, Ranbir's facial expressions became normal for a few moments. He was not able to understand why he was getting so hyper. Why is he getting so angry? He was still in his thoughts. That's when Mahi put her small hands on his chest and started trying to push him away from her. At the same time, she was also crying. Ranbir was trying very hard to control his anger. He did not want to hurt Mahi. But still, he was not able to do so. Seeing Mahi trying to push him away from her, Ranbir's grip on Mahi tightened again. After this, Ranbir was angry with Mahi all night long. The moments that were filled with love for Mahi a few days ago, today, those moments were only giving her pain and suffering. Not only her body, but her heart was also in pain. Because the one who was hurting her was her love. She trusted Ranbir the most. She never thought that her love, her husband, her Ranbir could hurt her so much. At around 7 in the morning, Ranbir woke up. He was feeling his head beating. He sat down holding his head for a while. He searched for someone around him. Then he saw Mahi sleeping in the corner of the bed. Mahi was sleeping like a scared rabbit. Looking at her face, it seemed that she was crying all night. Ranbir looked at Mahi's face carefully. There was a cut on her lips. And there was a wound on her forehead too. Her blood had dried up. There was still a fear on Mahi's face, because of which her innocent little face was shrunk. Looking at Mahi like this, Ranbir felt a pain in his heart. Gradually, he remembered how he had behaved with Mahi at night. Mahi's painful screams began to echo in his ears, because of which he became restless. He said to himself, how can I do this? That too with Mahi. Saying this, Ranbir began to stroke Mahi's head. With the touch of Ranbir, Mahi slowly opened her eyes. When she looked at Ranbir in front of her, she remembered everything that happened last night. She held the blanket tightly in her hands and sat up quickly. There was fear in her eyes. Looking at her, Ranbir felt a pain in his heart, which Mahi often used to get from Ranbir's chest out of fear. Today she was so scared of him. Ranbir extended his hand to touch her cheeks. But Mahi was scared and began to creep back. Before she fell off the bed, Ranbir grabbed her hand and pulled her towards him. Mahi went straight from Ranbir's chest. By pulling Ranbir like this, Mahi felt as if Ranbir would do the same thing to her again. She was trembling with fear. Once again, tears began to flow from her eyes. This time, her tears were falling on Ranbir's chest. Ranbir could clearly feel Mahi's trembling. He held her in his arms. But earlier, Mahi used to hug Ranbir. This time, she didn't do anything like that. She held the blanket like this and sat down in fear. By holding Ranbir like this, Mahi was feeling a lot of pain in her body. But she was trying her best not to make any sound from her mouth. But as soon as Ranbir held her tightly, Mahi started to scream. Hearing Mahi's scream, Ranbir moved her away from him. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Mahi's face carefully. What happened? But Mahi didn't answer his question. She sat down with her eyes down. As soon as Ranbir moved his hand to remove the blanket, Mahi hugged the blanket tightly. Ranbir's hands stopped there for a while. But then he pulled the blanket away from her. Ranbir was surprised to see Mahi's whole body. He was now angry with himself. What did he do to this delicate girl last night? There were blue marks all over Mahi's body. The bite mark was so deep that there was a little blood coming from there, which was now dry. Mahi was still with her head down. Her long hair had covered her face a little. Ranbir held her in his arms and said, "Forgive me, Mahi. I don't know what happened to me. I never wanted to do anything like this to you." Mahi slowly said from Ranbir's chest, "I am in pain." Saying this, she started looking at Ranbir with numb eyes. Ranbir could only see pain in his eyes. But his eyes were not only expressing the pain of the body, but also expressing the pain of his heart. Ranbir had understood that he had not only hurt Mahi's body last night, but also hurt his heart. And this was increasing the restlessness in Ranbir. He held Mahi's face in his hands and said, "I'll be right back." Saying this, he got up from the bed and went to the washroom. He set the temperature of the bathtub water and mixed body pain relief medicine in it. He came out, picked up Mahi in his lap and came back to the washroom. He slowly put Mahi in the bathtub. As soon as he sat in the bathtub, Mahi was feeling a lot of relief. She felt as if her body pain was slowly reducing. After about half an hour, Ranbir picked her up again and put her under the hot shower. At this time, Mahi and Ranbir were both soaking under the shower. During all this, Mahi did not say a word to Ranbir, except that "I am in pain." There was a strange silence between the two. He closed the shower and gently cleaned Mahi's body with a towel. Then he put her in the bathroom and brought her back to the room and put her in front of the dressing. During this time, Ranbir also wore a bathrobe. He dried Mahi's hair with a dryer and removed the bathrobe and applied ointment to her wounds. Then he made her wear a loose long t-shirt. Then someone knocked on the door. When Ranbir opened the gate, there was a main breakfast trolley in front of him. Ranbir grabbed the trolley from outside and closed the door and came in. He put all the breakfast on the table and held Mahi's hand and brought her to the sofa. Then he took her in his lap and sat down. Mahi was still sitting in a daze. Ranbir didn't like Mahi being so quiet. He wanted her to complain, fight and get angry at him. Ranbir started feeding her breakfast with his hands. Mahi was also eating her breakfast like a good child. After feeding her breakfast, Ranbir put her back on the bed and put a painkiller in her mouth and put a glass of water on her lips. After drinking water, Ranbir put her back on the bed and covered her with a blanket. During all this, Mahi had never looked at Ranbir. Ranbir looked at Mahi, who was keeping her head on the pillow and looking at the window with her empty eyes. Ranbir put his hand on her head and went to the closet room to get ready. When Ranbir got ready, Mahi was already asleep. Ranbir kissed her forehead and went out of the room. Why is Ranbir behaving like this with Mahi? Will Mahi leave Ranbir after all this? What will Anita do when she finds out about Ranbir's such behavior? To know more, keep listening to Oh Baby only on Love Pulse Diaries. Today, Ranvir was very busy in the office. But he kept calling Mahi and inquiring about her well-being. Mahi also agreed to what he said. When Mahi woke up in the afternoon, she looked at the entire room. She realized that she was alone in the room. She slowly got up from the bed and sat like this for a while. Now she was very comfortable in her body pain. She took a deep breath and went to the washroom to change her clothes from the cupboard. After a while, she came out of the washroom. At that time, she was wearing a full-sleeved kurti and blouse. Her body was not visible. She got a little ready and came out of the room. As soon as she came out of the room, she saw Vedant coming in front of her. Seeing Vedant, she bowed her head and quietly started going from there. She wanted to go to Sarika at this time. Vedant was coming towards her while talking to someone on the phone. But as soon as he saw Mahi, he disconnected the phone, kept it in his pocket and moved his feet towards her. Before Mahi could go from there, Vedant called her and stopped her. Vedant said, "Mahi, wait a minute." After hearing this, he moved forward and stopped himself. When Vedant came to him, he saw that Mahi was still bowing her head. Vedant found Mahi's behavior strange. He was also a little worried. He asked lovingly, "What happened? Is everything okay?" Mahi said with her head bowed, "Yes, everything is fine." Vedant was looking at Mahi carefully. He said normally, "First look at me and then answer." For a while, Mahi did not raise her head. When Vedant said again, Mahi looked at him. Seeing the wound on Mahi's forehead, Vedant asked a little worried, "What happened? How did you get hurt?" Mahi looked the other way and said, "By mistake, my foot slipped and I got hurt." Vedant saw Mahi's behavior and realized that Mahi was lying. He held her hand and brought her to the terrace. And then asked in a little harsh tone, "Now tell me what happened? But tell me the truth this time." Hearing Vedant, Mahi's eyes were wet. She kept her head down. She did not want Vedant to see her wet eyes. Vedant said again, "I am waiting. Are you telling me or should I end our friendship today?" Mahi looked at Vedant with wet eyes. And she said in tears, "Am I so bad that everyone is getting angry with me?" She started crying while saying this. Vedant melted seeing her crying like this. And he said, "No, child, you are very cute. Can anyone be angry with you? Tell me, who made you angry? Did Ranvir say anything to you?" Hearing Ranvir's name, Mahi started crying even more. Vedant understood that Ranvir has done something. He told Mahi to calm down. "What did Ranvir say? Tell me, I will talk to him myself." Mahi started shaking her head in tears and said, "No, you don't talk to him. Otherwise, he will get angry with me again." While saying this, Mahi became quiet. While crying, her hiccups stopped. Vedant understood what Ranvir has done from Mahi's incompleteness. He did not understand it right to make Mahi uncomfortable by asking more about it. Then he lovingly waved his hand on Mahi's head and said, "Mahi, please don't cry. I will definitely talk to Ranvir once. Look, you are not alone. We are all with you." Mahi looked at Vedant with tears in her eyes and said, "If Ranvir gets angry with me again, that why did I tell you, then I am very scared of his anger." Vedant said, "He will not say anything to you. I will make him understand. You don't worry. Okay." Mahi shook her head and said innocently, "Okay, now should I go to sister?" Vedant smiled and said, "Okay, go. And yes, always remember one thing, your friend is always with you." Mahi looked at Vedant with a smile and left. As soon as Mahi left, Vedant's face turned into anger. He sent his fists and said, "Ranvir, how can you do this? You will have to answer today." He took out his phone and dialed Ranvir's number. As soon as the phone was received from the other side, Vedant said in his head voice, "Where are you? Meet me in Hotel Hyatt's room number 809 in half an hour." Saying this, he cut the phone and left. After about half an hour, Vedant and Rudra were waiting for Ranvir in Hotel Hyatt's room number 809. Rudra's face seemed that Vedant had told him everything. And at this time, his anger was clearly visible from Rudra's face. After a while, Ranvir opened the door of the room and came in. So both of them started staring at him with burning eyes. Ranvir asked both of them with his eyes narrowed, "What happened? Why are you both looking at me like this? As if you will kill me." Rudra got up from his seat in anger and punched Ranvir in the face. Due to this, Ranvir's face tilted to the other side. Due to the punch, the side of Ranvir's lips was cut, from which blood started coming. Ranvir cleaned his blood with his thumb and then angrily looked at Rudra and said, "Have you gone mad? What are you doing?" So Vedant got up in anger and came to Ranvir. And holding his collar said, "You have gone mad, Ranvir. What are you doing with Mahi? And how dare you force her? I knew that you don't deserve an innocent girl like Mahi." Hearing Vedant's words, Ranvir got a little embarrassed. Then he released his collar from his hand and said, "This is a personal matter between me and my wife. It would be better if you stay away from her." I will handle her myself. After hearing Ranvir's words, Rudra said with his teeth grinding, Mahi is not only your wife, but also the daughter-in-law of the Kapoor family. And also someone's sister. Don't consider Mahi alone. If you do anything wrong with her, then we will all be against you. And what did you say? You will handle this matter yourself. I saw how you are handling it. Will you force her again? Or will you show her your evilness again? Or will you scare her or threaten her? Tell me, what will you do? After hearing Rudra's words, Ranvir started getting very angry. He was trying to control his anger by clenching his fists. He turned his back to both of them. Then with frustration, he said while waving his hand in his hair, I know that I have done very wrong with Mahi. And I didn't want to hurt her. But I don't understand what had happened to me at that time. Why wasn't I able to control myself? I was getting very hyper. I was feeling a different change in my entire body. This has been happening to me. I am not able to control my anger. I don't know what I do when I am angry. Then he looked at both of them and said, You both know how much I love Mahi. Can I ever hurt her? Can I ever hurt her this much? But I am telling the truth. I don't know what I am doing to her. After listening to Ranvir, Vedant got a little doubt. Vedant calmed himself down and asked Ranvir, How long has this been happening to you, Ranvir? Ranvir took a deep breath and sat on the sofa and said, This has been happening to me for the past few days. I feel a different kind of restlessness. After that, I get very hyper. My anger gets aggravated. I am not able to control myself. I don't even know what I am doing. Vedant looked at Rudra. Now, Rudra also got a little doubt. Rudra said, Ranvir, I think you should get your blood tested. Is this a big conspiracy against you? After listening to Rudra and Vedant, Ranvir got into a deep thought and said, Yes, this is possible. Because even I don't find this change normal. Vedant said, Okay, then I will talk to the doctor for your blood test tomorrow. But it would be better if you stay away from Mahi for a few days. Because until we find out the right reason for this, you will have to keep a distance from Mahi. Otherwise, you will hurt Mahi again. After listening to Vedant, now Ranvir also wanted to know the right reason for his changed behavior. He had already hurt Mahi a lot. He didn't want to hurt her anymore. So, he nodded his head and said, Okay, I will stay in the hotel tonight. And I will get my blood tested tomorrow and find out the reason for all this. Until then, I will keep a distance from Mahi for her safety. After discussing a few more things, Rudra and Vedant both left the room. Ranvir locked the door and stood in front of the big glass window of the room. At this time, Ranvir was in deep thought. He was only thinking about Mahi. He wanted to hug Mahi right now because she had hurt him a lot. But Vedant was also right that he should not take a wrong step in anger again. For this, he had to stay away from Mahi for a while. Ranvir looked at Mahi's photo on his phone and said, I am sorry darling, I will fix everything very soon. Night Kapoor mansion. Samira was lying on her bed with a tablet in her hand. She was looking at the tablet very carefully and there was a devil's smile on her lips. She said to herself, Tomorrow's day and everything is over. I have come this far. Now I will also know what I want will happen. And no one will be able to stop me. Tomorrow will be Mahi's last day in this house. After that, I will become Mrs. Ranvir Roy Kapoor. Now Ranvir will only be mine. Only Samira's. With this saying, she lay on the bed on her back and started laughing like crazy. On the other hand, Mahi was lying alone in her room on her bed. Although yesterday Ranvir had done a lot wrong with her, but still she was missing Ranvir. Remembering the good times she had, Mahi's eyes became teary. She had hugged a pillow and her tears were soaking that pillow. Today she was also feeling a different kind of fear that something very bad is going to happen. She was feeling like talking to Ranvir and she was looking at her phone lying on the bedside table. But she was not able to talk to Ranvir. Similarly, Mahi's eyes became teary. On the other hand, Ranvir was also restless in the hotel room because Mahi was not with him. He was drinking too today. He was also feeling a different kind of fear that something bad is going to happen. Something precious of him is going to go away from him. Now he had had a lot of drinks. He got up from the sofa and laid down on the bed. But his stomach was swollen. His lips were shaking. Mahi, don't ever go away from me. I won't be able to live without you. Similarly, his eyes also became teary. Will Samira be able to succeed in her intentions? Will Mahi really get away from Ranvir forever? Or will Ranvir recognize this conspiracy and save his and Mahi's relationship? To know more, keep listening to Oh Baby only on Love Pulse Diaries. Ranvir woke up late in the morning. That too, when his phone started ringing. Ranvir received the call while lying down. He put his ear to the phone and said in a sleepy voice, "Hello." On the other side, Vedant's voice came. "Hello Ranvir, wake up quickly and get ready. The doctor will reach in some time." Ranvir said, "Okay, I will be ready." He said and disconnected the phone and got up from the bed. After getting up from the bed, he took a towel and went to the washroom. After some time, Ranvir took a shower and got ready. Rudra sent Ranvir's clothes to his assistant's hands. After some time, the doctor came to Ranvir's room for checkup. He asked the nurse to take Ranvir's blood sample. The nurse said to Ranvir, "Sir, you fold the sleeves so that I can take your blood sample." Ranvir folded the sleeves of one hand and put his arms forward. The nurse took Ranvir's blood sample. The doctor did some more tests on Ranvir and said, "Mr. Kapoor, I have done your checkup and taken your blood sample. You will get your report by evening. After that, we will know why you are having all these problems. By the way, I think." The doctor stopped saying this. Ranvir asked, "What do you think? Tell me clearly." The doctor said, "I think you are having drugs." Ranvir asked in confusion, "Drugs?" The doctor said, "Actually, the symptoms that you have told me, I think these are the symptoms. Because these symptoms can be seen only when a particular type of drug is given. When a person takes this drug, he becomes hyper. He has no control over his anger. He can hurt himself or others in anger. By the way, this will be confirmed only when the report comes. Only then your treatment will be done. Okay, now I am leaving." Saying this, the doctor left the room. As soon as the doctor left, Ranvir asked himself, "Are you really giving me drugs? But who will do this?" Afternoon Ranvir was sitting in his cabin and was busy with his work. Then the door of his cabin was knocked. Ranvir looked at his file and said, "Come in." Then his secretary opened the door and came to his cabin. And the black coffee brought for him, Ranvir kept it on his desk and quietly left from there. Ranvir picked up his coffee cup and put it on his lips and took a sip. He found the taste of coffee a little strange. But still he started drinking coffee. Ranvir had finished his coffee when his phone started ringing. Ranvir kept the cup on the table and kept it on the desk. He picked up his phone. Private numbers were showing on the screen. Seeing this, Ranvir's legs shrank. He received the phone and put it on his ear and said, "Hello?" Hearing the other side, Ranvir's eyes became dangerous. His grip on the phone tightened with anger. He quickly disconnected the phone, picked up the key to his car and left the cabin. Ranvir was driving at full speed on the road. His face was looking very serious at that time. And his eyes were looking so dangerous, as if he was going to kill someone today. It was 4 o'clock in the evening. Ranvir's car stopped in front of a 5-star hotel. Ranvir quickly got out of the car and went inside the hotel. Ranvir's steps moved to the left. When the hotel manager saw Ranvir Roy Kapoor, he moved forward to greet him. But seeing Ranvir's angry face, his steps stopped where they were. At that time, Ranvir's eyes were red with anger. Ranvir was so angry that if anyone came in front of him, he would kill him. But his heart was saying the same thing again and again, that it can't be true. At that time, his anger was overpowering. In a short while, he reached the 10th floor through the lift. As soon as the lift opened, he moved forward. While passing through the corridor, he stopped in front of a room. Looking at the room number, he took a deep breath and closed his eyes. His fists were strained in anger. And when he opened his eyes, it seemed as if blood had come down his eyes. He hit a loud kick on the door with anger, because of which the door opened with a loud voice. Seeing the view in front of him, Ranvir was overwhelmed with anger. Now his anger was talking with his head held high. Then he moved his steps to that side. The mother in front of him was hugging someone else. The whole room was decorated as if someone had arranged a romantic date. With Mahi was Ankit, who had kept Mahi in his arms. Looking at one eye, it seemed as if Mahi herself was hugging Ankit. But the truth was that Mahi was trying to keep Ankit away from her. As soon as Mahi's eyes met Ranvir's angry red eyes, her eyes spread with surprise and fear. She quickly moved away from Ankit and moved towards Ranvir. Mahi said only this, "Ranvir, it's me." But before Mahi came to Ranvir, Ranvir moved his steps towards Ankit. He held Ankit's neck and put it on the wall and lifted it up a little from the ground. Ranvir's grip was so strong that Ankit's breathing began to stop. He began to tremble to get rid of Ankit's grip. He quickly threw him on the ground and began to punch him on his face one by one. "How dare you touch him? She is mine. She belongs only to Ranvir Roy Kapoor." Ranvir was speaking angrily while hitting Ankit. Due to Ranvir's many punches, Ankit's face turned bloody. But Ranvir did not stop hitting him. Seeing the scene, Mahi's whole body was drenched in sweat. He grabbed his scarf and said in his dying voice, "Ranvir, don't do this. He will die. Please leave him." When Mahi's voice was heard in Ranvir's ears, he looked angrily at Mahi and left Ankit and stood up. He moved towards Mahi and said, "Are you worried about your friend?" As soon as Ranvir moved away from Ankit, Ankit took advantage of the situation and quickly ran out of the room. Ranvir saw Ankit running and then returned to see Mahi and said, "Oh, so this is how you have saved your lover. Looks like Kofit was in pain seeing you getting beaten by him." Ranvir came close to Mahi and held her cheeks tightly and said, "I thought I did wrong with you when you deserve much more than that. Today I will tell you what is actually Ranvir Roy Kapoor." Then he said, "What is the consequence of cheating Ranvir Roy Kapoor?" Saying this, he held Mahi's hand tightly and pulled her out of the room. Ranvir's grip was very strong on Mahi's hands, due to which Mahi was in great pain. She was crying and trying to say something. "Ranvir, listen to me completely. You are misunderstanding me. Please don't misunderstand me." But Ranvir didn't want to hear anything. The same scene was coming when he saw Mahi close to Ankit, due to which his anger was increasing. Ranvir brought Mahi to his car and opened the car door and pushed her inside. Then he came to the other side and sat on his seat and drove the car at full speed. Due to some pain and some fear, tears were flowing continuously from Mahi's eyes. But it was as if Mahi's voice was not reaching Ranvir's ears. Mahi cried and said, "Ranvir, please listen to me once. It was not true. It is not what you are thinking." But Ranvir kept driving the car at full speed without listening to her. In some time, he stopped the car at a deserted place. He opened the door on his side and came out of the car. Then he walked quickly and came to Mahi's seat. He opened the door on his side and pulled Mahi out of the car. Ranvir did it so quickly that Mahi almost fell down. But she somehow managed herself. Mahi was looking at Ranvir with tears in her eyes. She tried once more and said, "Ranvir, please listen to me once." But before she could complete her words, Ranvir grabbed her shoulders and pulled her out of the car. Then he looked at her with his red eyes and said, "What should I listen to? I told you not to deceive me. Otherwise, I will kill you. And Ranvir Roy Kapoor never tolerates deceit. So now you will have to die, Mahi." Hearing Ranvir's words, Mahi's voice was not coming out due to fear. Now she was trembling with fear. She wanted to tell Ranvir that, "Ranvir, I am not wrong. I am not deceiving you. But she could not say anything. Because now she did not have the courage due to fear, she was breathing heavily. Seeing Mahi so scared, Ranvir's heart did not melt this time. A ruthless smile came on her lips. He started taking his steps back. After walking a few steps away, he pulled out the gun on his back and said to Mahi, I was not enough for you. That's why you needed someone else. But what is mine will always be mine. And if it cannot be mine completely, then I will kill it. Mahi was frozen in her place. The person who always protected her, today he wanted to kill her. Her eyes were looking into Ranvir's eyes. As if asking, Ranvir, was this your trust? Didn't you ever feel that your Mahi cannot deceive you? Didn't you trust your love? So soon you lost faith in your Mahi. You should have asked me once. You should have asked me once. Can your Mahi think of anyone else other than you? My heart knows, my soul knows that I have only loved you. You are the first and last man in my life who has touched me, whom I have given everything. So easily you lost faith in me. Why? Ranvir, why? Why didn't you trust your love? Thinking this, Mahi closed her eyes tightly. Because of this, a drop of tear flowed from her eyes and came on her cheeks. Ranvir was looking at Mahi with hatred. He was remembering the moments he spent with Mahi. Meeting Mahi for the first time, getting married to Mahi, all the dreams he had seen with her, everything was moving in front of his eyes like a movie. Because of this, a pain came on his face too. But as soon as he remembered hugging Mahi's Ankit in the hotel room, the expressions on his face became harsh once again. That's when he heard the sound of bullets. 6 bullets went off at once and the atmosphere there was filled with the sound of bullets. And everything calmed down in a while. Now there was only silence there. The silence of everything ending. As if a storm had passed from there. Was everything really over? Was this the end of Mahi and Ranvir's love story? Or will this end bring a new beginning? To know more, keep listening to Oh Baby only on Love Pulse Diaries.